Hello, I'm thrilled to be here today and have this conversation on innovation, which is a topic that's really close to my heart. Let me start by telling you a story. And this is not my story. This is actually a story from Ernest Hemingway and his classic book, The Sun Also Rises. And I realize I might have startled you a little. You typically would not associate Ernest Hemingway and his classic books around on ideas of innovation, cloud, and disruption. Nonetheless, let me go with this and bear with me for a minute. But in his book, The Sun Also Rises, the character Mike is asked a question. And the question is, Mike, how did you go bankrupt? And he replies, and he says, I went bankrupt in two ways. First, gradually, and then suddenly. And the reason I'm telling you this story is, quite honestly, there isn't a better way today to describe how innovation lurks around and nibbles around the edges of an industry, a business, or a profession before arriving very suddenly and appending long established beliefs and players. This happened to BlackBerry, which was the company that pretty much invented the smartphone. This happened to the US steel industry when after World War II, the Japanese manufacturers came in. This is happening today to car manufacturers when you see ride-hailing companies like Uber and Lyft come in and really think about the business and the operating model very differently. This is happening around us all the time. Let me tell you another interesting fact. This morning, I Googled the definition of innovation. And I said, before I come in and have this conversation with you, let me just Google and see what I can find. And guess the number of results I got on Google. Only 1.7 billion. Only 1.7 billion. By the way, when was the last time you heard the word innovation? Was it at work? Was it in the newspaper this morning? By the way, if you pick up today's newspaper, it's filled with the word innovation. Or did you pick this up in an advertisement for a consumer product? I'm guilty as charged. I recently bought a coffee maker with an innovative brewing method. So innovation has become a buzzword, right? It's the buzzword of the decade. It has become a canned response today, by the way, to every question that comes your way. In fact, it doesn't even matter what the question is. What does success look like? Be innovative. What does the future hold for us? More innovation. What does the past tell us? Drive more innovation. Whatever conversation you're in, whatever question you're thrown at, innovation will somehow creep its way into that conversation. The word has been overused today to a point where it's now leading to a loss of understanding of what it is we need when we say we need more innovation. We've lost sight of the specific skills and behaviors that are needed to be innovative. And that's the nuance that really matters, and that's the nuance that we're losing. So let me bring these two stories together, from Ernest Hemingway to Google results on definition of innovation. Innovation today has become the most important and at the same time most misunderstood word in our dictionary. So with that context, my aim today is to make you all think a little differently, just a little differently about innovation. And I will talk about the specific skills and behaviors that are required for a business to be innovative. Finally, I'm a technologist and a cloud practitioner, so I can't do this without talking about the role of technology and cloud in AWS, especially as part of this conversation on innovation. So I'll bring some of my learnings from that vantage point as well. So with that, in the next few minutes, I'll try and bring this to life by answering three questions for you. Number one, what is a simple way to define and measure innovation? How do you really know if your business is being innovative or not? Number two, how do you make innovation really happen in your business? And I'll talk about the three ideas that we've followed Amazon and AWS every day. They're part of our DNA, and that's what makes us one of the most innovative companies in the world. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but this is just our way, and I'd love to share some learnings. And number three, why do I believe this is the time now to think deeply about technology, think deeply about innovation, and that's where my call for action is. So let's get going. Number one, what do we mean by innovation and how do we measure it? Innovation to me is executing an idea which addresses a specific challenge and achieves value for your customer. Let me say this again. Innovation to me is executing an idea which addresses a specific challenge and achieves value for your customer, which will eventually drive value for your business. And I'm emphasizing the word executing here. Innovation is not just thinking. Innovation is making things happen. Creativity is thinking of new things, but that's not the conversation that we're having today. Innovation is doing things. Innovation is making things happen. And there are two kinds of innovation. There is continuous innovation, which is incremental changes or doing things better and differently. For example, at Amazon, we're constantly reducing the cost of shipping, we're improving delivering times, we're bringing a much better selection of products all the time, and that's continuous innovation. The other kind of innovation is discontinuous innovation, which is a step change or doing things, new things that you were not doing before. It could be a new product, it could be a new service, it could be a new business, Again, going back to the Amazon ecosystem, Amazon Go stores, where today, by the way, you really don't need a checkout. You can literally pick up what you want and walk out of that store. That is a step change, and that is discontinuous innovation. How do you measure innovation? Again, I'm going to keep it really simple, and I'm going to give you one simple metric, and the metric is time to value. Let me define that. Time to value is the time it takes for an innovative idea from your organization, your business, your profession to reach your customers. So from the day it starts to the time you can really take that to a customer, what is that time period? By the way, and if you're taking months and quarters to get ideas to your customers, I can promise you there's somebody out there today, there's a business out there who's thinking about getting those ideas to your customers much faster. So that's what innovation means and how you measure innovation. Let's shift gears and talk about how do you really make it happen. And let me start by saying the path to innovation is no longer a mystery. And contrary to popular belief, innovation is not a free-flowing work of magic, and it does not manifest itself organically. It's not an accident. It's an intentional process. It takes work, it takes structure, it takes strategy. And I'm going to talk about the three ideas that we follow at Amazon and AWS every day. And this is just how we operate. Let me start with the first one, which is customers at the center of everything we build. And Amazon, our goal is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. And everything we do is driven by customers. For example, at AWS, 95% of what we build is driven by what customers tell us they want. And the rest is when we're inventing on their behalf and reading between the lines and coming up with new ideas. And we start by diving really deep to understand customers. Where do they have a frustration? Where do they have a pain in their life? And we work backwards from that and find ways to invent and delight our customers. And by the way, when you're listening to a customer, you need to be very specific about the use case and design for customers who really want it. Focus on a specific customer need and delight them. Other use cases will eventually follow. And by the way, pain points and use cases are not difficult to find if you look deeply. We have this conversation on Amazon a lot of times around what we call divine discontent. And Jeff spoke about this in his 2016 shareholder letter, where he said customers are always beautifully, wonderfully dissatisfied. Even when they report being happy and business is great, even when they don't know it yet, customers want something better. And if you have a desire to delight customers, you will invent on their behalf. Let me move to the second one, which is the culture of experiments and the permission to fail. And at Amazon, our mental model on innovation is very simple. Innovation requires two things: the ability to try a lot of experiments and not having to live with the collateral damage of failure. So let's start with experiments. And when you think of an experiment, you typically think of scientists in a lab and white coats, and that's the way I thought when I heard the word for the first time in Amazon when I joined some time back. But the point behind experiments is that if you know in advance to a high degree of certainty what the outcome of that experiment would look like, it's not really an experiment. An experiment is when you're actively trying out a new idea and you're building something, right? It could be a prototype, it could be a MVP, and you're constantly iterating, you're constantly learning, you're constantly changing your mind. And by the way, a lot of times you're throwing in the towel when things don't work. And this is what I believe requires this skill of learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because when you're running experiments, you really don't know what the outcomes are going to be. The other thing that you need along with a lot of experiments is the permission to fail. And the permission to fail well. And again, I'll go back to what Jeff says, right? And he says failure and invention are inseparable twins. Failure comes part and parcel with invention. It's not optional. And he goes on to say one area where I think we're especially distinctive at Amazon is failure. I believe we are the best place in the world to fail. And we've had plenty of practice on failing as well. And as you think about this today, right, most large organizations will embrace the idea of invention and innovation, but they're not willing to suffer the strings of failed experiments. And that's where the problem is. And if your team today, and if your colleagues, and if your team, and if your organization, if your business, if your profession, and people around you are afraid of failing and they're playing safe, I really don't think you can find a way to innovate. So the way to innovate is to double your failure rate and make sure you're failing well, which means you're learning from the failures, right? And you're constantly iterating. You're not repeating the same mistakes, but you're learning from them. You're allowing mistakes till the time people learn from them. And the other thing that's happened, right, with technology and with cloud as an example, right? And AWS and cloud, for example, not only allows Amazon today, but also all our customers and everybody out there to run these experiments without worrying too much about the cost of failures. And we're constantly reducing the cost of experiments and failures. Let me bring this to life and give you an example. Let's assume you're a business today and you're trying something new, and you want to get to your customers in a different way, and you build an app, okay, just to experiment, just to try and see if that works. In the typical world, what you would do is you would have to order the hardware and the servers, think about licenses, which typically takes you a few weeks. You'll pull a team together, you will bring the app together, you'll build it up, you'll test it, you'll go live. And you spend some time and effort and money and resources to get it done. But that's not the problem. What happens if the app doesn't work? What if after that experiment, the data tells you that, listen, your customers are really not liking it and there has to be another channel for you to get to them? What do you really do with all the technical debt that you've built and all the investments that you've made? And that's where AWS and cloud, for example, makes it much, much easier, right? It makes you much faster. You can spin up servers and applications in minutes. And guess what? You can spin them down equally fast if things don't work, which to me is the raw material for running experiments and being okay with failure. Number 3, high velocity decision making that allows us to scale fast. And the simple insight here, and I'm going to keep it simple. Some decisions in life are reversible, others are not. And that distinction really matters. And the way we distinguish between these decisions at Amazon is what we call one-way and two-way door decisions. Two-way door decision is a decision which you can always come back from. For example, most decisions that you and I today take will be two-way door decisions, but they certainly don't seem like that in our minds. I was ordering dinner last night and it seemed like a one-way door decision, which quite honestly it isn't, right? You can always step back and you can cancel the order and you can order something else. It's not a one-way door decision. But the problem is, till the time you're able to make that distinction, you will believe everything is a one-way door decision and you will slow down. And you have to realize that customers are not more patient today than they were last year, which means you have to move faster and faster. You have to take decisions faster and faster and build your judgment over time. At Amazon, we say most decisions should be made with 70% of the information you wish you had. And if you're good at course correcting, if you're good at learning, if you're good at some of these experiments, you're okay at failure, you will develop judgment and you'll move faster and faster. So those are the 3 things: customer obsession, putting customers at the center of everything we do and working backwards. Number 2, the culture of experiments and the permission to fail well, which can be really liberating. And then number 3, the agility and speed in decision making. That's what we do. And again, as I said right at the start of this, I don't believe this is the only way to think about innovation, but this is the way that works for us. Let me move to the third part of the conversation on why I believe the time is now to think deeply and be more intentional about innovation. Now, I'll make 3 arguments for that. Number 1, if you really rewind the clock back, right, some of the biggest innovations that have happened in the last few years, they really don't happen when everybody is happy and safe and when the future looks bright. These innovations and inventions happen when people are a little worried, when the consequences of not acting quickly are too painful to bear. World over, if you look at some of the largest startups, right, and I'll just take a couple of examples, Uber, Airbnb, they came out of some of the recessions that we had in the past few years. And today, almost every business in the world is asking for better ways and different ways of working more efficiently, getting to customers faster and through different channels. And that creates a ton of opportunity for all of us to innovate on behalf of our customers. The second argument for why the time is now, COVID literally has changed the way we work, right? It has changed the way we entertain. It's changed the way we build. It's changed the way we sell and consume. And I call this the era of the virtual enterprise. Today, sitting anywhere in the world, you can literally build a business from anywhere, right? You can hire virtually, you can collaborate, you can sell virtually, you can deliver your services and products, and you can provide support. And that just completely unlocks a ton of opportunity, right? And this ability to connect, communicate, coordinate in a flexible way 24/7 is not something that we should miss. And then the third argument for why the time is now for innovation, what the cloud has done, right? And I spoke about AWS and cloud and how it reduces the cost of experiments and failure. But what cloud is really doing today, it's democratizing technology. Any of you today sitting wherever you are, in your homes, in your Starbucks, wherever, you have access to as much compute, as much storage, as much analytics as you need. And by the way, this amount of technology and capabilities used to be available to large corporations with millions of dollars of budget. And today, you're sitting in a Starbucks or anywhere in the world, you can pretty much access all of that on a tap. And that's the reason to move now. So let me bring this together and recap and emphasize just the 3 messages I want to leave you with. Message number 1, innovation matters. As a leader, as a business, you need to innovate. You have to think big on behalf of yourself. You have to think big on behalf of your teams, your business, and ultimately, I think you have to think big on behalf of this country. And the calculus of innovation is very simple. Knowledge drives innovation, innovation drives productivity, productivity drives economic growth, and then economic growth drives countries, businesses, all of us as professionals, right? That's the flywheel. The second message I want to leave you with, innovation is an intentional process. It's not organic magic. It's not an accident. It requires specific skills, culture, behaviors, and it requires you to be intentional and conscious about these things. For example, by putting customers at the heart of everything you build, running experiments, the culture of allowing your people to try things and being okay with failure till the time you're failing well and learning from it, and then moving really fast with high velocity decision making. That's what you need for innovation. And by the way, this piece around fast decision making, and as I said earlier, right, customers are not more satisfied today than they were last year. Today, leadership really demands all of us to take decisions. It's not just about innovation, it's about leadership, and it's about leading. And by the way, if you couple that with this permission to fail, this is really energizing. I really believe the only sustainable advantage you can have today over others is agility. That's it. Never lose that. Because nothing else today that you're building is sustainable. Everything else that you build, somebody else can replicate. But if you have agility, if you have speed, if you're moving really fast and trying things, that is truly a superpower. And then the third and last message I want to leave you with, the time is now. I can promise you one thing today. It doesn't matter what industry, what business, what profession, what you're doing today or what role you're in today. There is somebody out there who's thinking deeply about how to get to your customers better, faster, and serve them more effectively, and do what you do today in half the time with twice the effectiveness. There's somebody out there who's thinking about that. So with the power of technology that is today in our hands, the playing field today, which is getting more and more leveled every day, between individuals, small companies, startups, small and medium businesses, large corporations, and the need to solve large complex problems at scale, which is what businesses and India as an example needs. I don't think any of us should waste this crisis. And I quite honestly believe none of us are worth our salt as leaders, technologists, professionals, whatever you're doing, if you're not thinking big on behalf of ourselves, if you're not thinking big on behalf of our teams, if you're not thinking big on behalf of our businesses in our country. We need to move now. Thank you.